All right. Well, listen, I want to thank everybody for being here with us today. Time is one of the most precious commodities that any of us have, and I want to honor you all for that. I certainly want to thank Stephanie for extending the opportunity. This kind of came about by accident when we ran into each other in an elevator at the Women in DSO in Vegas. And Bobby has been exceptional, and I know several of you know Andy Klein, who I've known for almost 20 years. And so this is a really wonderful opportunity. And I get to spend a little time with you talking about literally one of my favorite topics that has meant so much and driven so much in my life, which is optimism, and how optimism can drive your life, both inside and outside dentistry, toward the life that you want to live. And so what we're going to be doing today is really talking about this thing, that thing between your ears, the brain. And as I was getting ready to spend some time with you, what really struck me as rather interesting is that when you take a look at your objectives, the very first one, applying an outward mindset built on self-awareness, mindset change, accountability, and collaboration, boy, oh boy. I mean, I can't think of anything that I am more aligned with than that one bullet, not to mention the others. And so as I thought about our time here together, I see today that my impact needs to fall into three categories. Number one, I want to make an attempt to have you embrace the idea that you hold the key to your own reality and your own growth throughout the years. Number two, that a single thought can change everything, and what you think, your body will follow. And last but not least, you have the ability to discover happiness, the real kind, as represented by a rainbow of possibilities. So I'd like to invite you to consider, just for the next 60-ish minutes, the idea that optimism can be a crucial element in your growth, both professionally as well as personally. And as we go on this journey together, as we embark, I want to share with you a quote. The quote has become a hallmark of all of my teachings, and it is by Dr. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor, neurologist, and psychiatrist, who went upon his life after suffering the horrors of Auschwitz for years to impart to people that mindset matters. And the quote is as follows, as you see on your screen, and please feel free to take any pictures, and I know this will be up on your portal anyway. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in this space lies our freedom to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So that space, ladies, can be a millisecond, a day, a week, a year, or several years. But it's our choice how we choose to come out of that space that will garner the next steps in our lives. Because the reality here is every single thing that happens in our lives is neutral. It's our thought that we give to it that gives that situation power and happiness. Real happiness is a comparative emotion. We can't know happiness without understanding sadness. So in order for you to better understand what makes me tick, I think we need to take a step back in time together. 21 years ago next month, this was my life. That wasn't me. I would have been like Doogie Howser, but you get it. That's my nephew, Steven, who's now in his early 30s teaching high school math in Florida. And this was my life. And in June of 2003, I had an extraordinarily bad week. And it was at the end of that bad week that I got up on a Saturday morning, put on my robe with a great deal of difficulty, and descended down the stairs of my townhome. And as I descended down the stairs, I could smell the aroma of breakfast, toast, eggs, coffee, and, that wonderful smell of coffee, even if you don't drink it, right? And as I entered the threshold of the kitchen, I looked down at my right hand, my dominant hand, and I looked like the right-sided version of the mummy because I was bandaged from fingertip to mid-bicep. And that would be a big deal for anybody to have their dominant hand bandaged, but for a dentist, that was a very scary experience. And believe it or not, even though this story was 21 years ago, at that point, I had been in dentistry for nearly 20 years. I started at 16 as a dental assistant. They made me wear white pants, even after Labor Day. And so all I ever knew was being a dentist. And so that was all about my identity. We'll talk about that in a second. And so on that day, as I sat down looking like the right-sided version of the mummy, I had 2 jobs that day. Today I have 3, then I had 2. One was to eat said breakfast, which obviously would be difficult. The other was to sweeten my coffee. And now I happen to be a sweet and low guy, you know, the pink packets. And whether you like the pink packets, the blue packets, the yellow packets, the brown packets, the white packets, you've all had the opportunity to open one of those up before in your life, right? Easy peasy, right? Did you ever think about it? Well, that single act of attempting to open up Fort Knox to my injured hand that day changed the entire trajectory of my life. Because I tried to open that up and I just couldn't. I threw it away like it was mocking me. And I panicked. The tears exploded. The panic exploded. The fear arose. And I was in that space for several minutes. It just a mess. And then something happened. Something that I can't explain, a thought, a single thought. And it was this, you know, I don't know how, I don't know where, I don't know with whom, but I'm going to be okay. I never imagined this. And that started a journey of the next 17 months of unemployment. And I'm here to tell you happiness is a comparative emotion. I'm living proof. We can't know happiness without knowing sadness, and everything is neutral. From that point forward, after 17 months of unemployment, I was the liaison between the dentist and a dental lab. I had 16,000 interactions, yes, I counted, on cases. I then worked for Vita in North America, ran education in North America. That's where I met Andy Klein. And for the last 13 years, I've been associated with Spear Education. Today, this is what I do most of the time. I'm the MC of Spear's Summit, if any of you are joining us. So listen, I've led teams of 2 to 22. I've overseen budgets of tens of millions of dollars. I've spoken to groups of 2 to 22. Yeah, I've spoken to 2 people before. That was interesting. And so I'm here with all of these certifications that you're about to see populate on the screen because I've walked the walk and talked the talk, and I'm here to tell you there's another way to live your life. And these 2 last images before we get into it, these were both taken this year. Now notice the image below. What does the podium say? It says Ivoclar. This little guy was the keynote speaker for Ivoclar's North American sales meeting, talking about what we're about to talk about here. So I have a promise to make to you. I'm going to be giving you all killer, no filler. You're going to leave with tangible tools that you can use immediately throughout your lives from this point forward. My challenge to you is that I want you to be present. I want you to think about what I have to say, and don't let those yeah buts come into your mind. And as we go along today, I'm going to share with you some opportunities to engage with me and some things I'm doing and get your input on something. Thanks, Bobby. And at the very end, I'm going to give you a little bit of a gift. And the gift is one of the most precious things I could possibly give to you. And we'll get there when we get there. So what I want to say to you, ladies, is that your mindset drives your happiness, and your happiness drives your practice. What I very much believe is that there is no I in team. If my slides will go, there is no I in team, but there is me. And it's the me's in the organization, you included, where we have to understand that we have a responsibility for what goes on between our ears and what comes out between our mouths, our lips, I guess you could better say. And so what would it be like for you if you actually had an alliance within your practice where your team sat down and came up with the idea of what kind of a place do we want to show up to every day? How do we want to show up when there are challenges? And how do we want to keep each other accountable? We're going to keep each other accountable with proceeding with care, approaching without judgment, having genuine concern. What would that be like? Because see, we all approach life from the frame of our previous existence through a filter. And less than 13 minutes in, I'm going to give you my first tool. It's one of my frameworks, and it's an acronym of the word team. And I want you to get ready to put a name in the chat for those who want to participate. What does TEAM stand for? It stands for thoughts lead to emotions that lead to actions that manifest your life. So I want everybody to think right now of your dearest friend that you don't live with. Your dearest friend that you don't live with, and put the name in the chat. And whoever's first will use that one. If not, I'll use my bestie David's name. Rebecca was first, so Kavita, okay? So Rebecca, today's Friday, And in this scenario, for just a moment, everybody, I want you to think of your bestie's name. We're going to put care and concern in a little box. We're going to close that up and we're going to put it to the side for just a minute. Okay. So we're going to pretend that you texted Kavita last Friday and you haven't heard back from her yet. Now, minus care and concern, what might you be thinking about dear friend Kavita? What? She's too busy to text me back. Who does she think she is? I saw her on Facebook and Instagram. She was out to dinner with the Joneses. She had time to arrange that and go to dinner with them. She didn't text me back. What kind of emotions might that drive? Anger, frustration against Kavita? What kind of action might that drive? Well, it kind of depends what kind of person Rebecca is. Maybe she'd send her a nasty text or a passive-aggressive text. Or I know none of you are analytical, haha. Maybe you would count the exact number of days it took Kavita to text you back and you're going to wait the same number of days to text her back. But see, I tricked you. How does that manifest maintaining or elevating said dearest friendship? It doesn't, does it? So let's change the scenario. Now let's pretend, gosh forbid, Rebecca, that we find out that Kavita had something horrible happen. Now what are your thoughts? Oh my gosh, what can I do? How can I help? Now what kind of emotions are there? Care, love, compassion. Now what kind of actions are? Well, it depends. Maybe send over dinner, take care of the kids, the pets, send over a cleaning service. How does that manifest in maintaining or elevating dear friendship? It's a heck of a lot better. But we were in Viktor Frankl's space and we made a choice to get all angry about it. And this is what we do every single day. Every single day, it's estimated, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, that negativity costs businesses $3 billion a year. It's also estimated by the National Science Foundation that we produce up to 50,000 thoughts per day. 80% of those are negative and 95% of those are repetitive. Holy smokes. And you know what's even worse? We as a profession, we ain't happy. And I'm going to talk to you about the data. Now, some of you know this beautiful man inside and out. It's my dearest friend, Kyle Stanley. I had the beauty of meeting him by accident through a colleague in the middle of the pandemic. He's become one of my closest friends. And this is what Kyle often says: dentistry is what we do, not who we are. And our profession cannot equal our identity. And so if you look at the data, this is what Kyle brought to my attention. This is JADA data from 2015. It's a little old, but I'd be willing to bet you it's even worse. If you take a look at the data, take a look at those numbers. I'm going to summarize those numbers for you. In general, we are 2 times more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety disorder, and panic disorder. But help is on the way. And so I'm super excited to say, I'm always excited to say that Kyle and I are coming to Glidewell on November 1st and 2nd for Light Side Live. This is our in-person course to directly address burnout, stress, and anxiety that we have birthed to help our colleagues navigate through these challenging times. But you know what? You all are already part of an amazing group of individuals. Because according to Pennebaker, simply talking about our problems and sharing negative emotions with someone we trust can be profoundly healing. Take advantage of this group. I assume you have text, chains and WhatsApp groups or whatever. Take advantage of that because the research is clear. You are not alone. And when you reach out to others, it aids you dramatically. But I want to ask you a question. What is something you're telling yourself that you'd be better off letting go? Something you tell yourself every day, maybe about your team or your patients, your family, your friends. What's something you're telling yourself? So anybody remember this thing? You remember March of 2020 by any chance? Do you remember that weekend when you went into the grocery store and it was like apocalypse now and nothing was there anymore? Remember that? I remember that too. You know what also I remember? I remember standing at Spear in the auditorium and the text started to come through. Disney is closed. Vegas is closed. I live in Phoenix. Spring training is canceled. Large-scale venues in cities are canceled. Then, oh, I'm sure you remember this one. Dentistry is closed. And I was thrown back to the breakfast table almost 20 years prior. And I started to go nuts in my brain. I shouldn't use that term. I started to reel in my brain. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? If dentists can't stay afloat, how are they going to support their team? How are they going to treat their patients? How are they going to stay in business? Well, wait a minute. If they can't stay in business, how are they going to come to Spear? If they can't come to Spear, how's Spear going to stay in business? Spear can't stay in business. How am I going to have a job? What was I doing? I was in Viktor Frankl's space and I made a choice. You know what I was doing in that choice? Second tool of the day, I was jumping to catastrophe. And I was making stuff up in my head. I was creating a future that didn't necessarily exist. And I was making everything worse for myself. And then it happened again. A single thought, a thought that changed everything. You know what it was? Holy smokes, I've been through this before. Except this time, we're all in it together. Whereas last time, I was in it all alone. So we create this dualism of thought in our brains. Dualism, by definition, is the view that the mind and body exist as separate entities. Guess what? Rene Descartes coined this phrase in 1641. And there are individuals that still believe that their mind and body are not connected. But the reality is that there's a two-way interaction between mental and physical substances. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, Martin, what the heck does this have to do with dentistry? Well, it has everything to do with dentistry. And I've set you up to talk about this idea of dental dualism. Dental dualism is a term, I think, I coined, where we think that all we need to do is focus on clinical and practice management techniques or strategies, and we're going to be successful in practice. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, because here's the reality. The things that go on between your ears and what comes out between your lips are also skills. We in dentistry give credence to physical skills, prepping a crown. Oh yeah, let's talk about that. How long did it take you to prep your first crown versus how long did it take you to do it now? I guarantee you're much more efficient, right? Because you've garnered the skill. We need to get away from the idea that these mental and verbal skills take any less effort and practice than others, and they will absolutely impact our success in practice. So what I'm about to share with you is some data, some science of how what goes on between your ears affects your ability in practice. If you want more detail of this, I actually had a featured cover article in Dental Economics, January, where I go into more detail about all of this research. So let's talk about the science. We're going to talk about it relative to the idea of it being myth, okay? We're going to have a little fun with it as we go along. So first myth, positivity has nothing to do with your ability to see the bigger picture. Really? Well, if you ask Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, she would bear to differ with you. She has determined a theory called the broaden and build theory, which you can see on the screen, but allow me to summarize. Basically, positive thoughts allow our brain to be more broad in its consideration and function. You've experienced this before. You get out of a difficult situation, you say to yourself, why didn't I think of that? Why didn't I say that? Why didn't that occur to me, right? Why? Because negative emotions serve to narrow our brain's function. They've even determined that when we engage with positivity, we actually create neuronal connections in our brain that we can then go back to later. So positivity matters. And before anybody starts to think further, we're going to talk about the reality that this is not about walking around with a smile on your face, good vibes only. That's toxic. That's not what we're talking about. And we will talk about toxic positivity as we go along. So what's myth number two? Myth number two, positivity has nothing to do with your ability to see. Hogwash. Schmitz looked at individuals. He split them into two groups and he showed them photographs, the same photographs. The individuals primed to be positive saw the primary image in the foreground and all the detail in the background. The ones primed to be negative only saw the primary image in the foreground and missed a lot of detail in the background. Think that's important for diagnosis? Maybe. Right? So what's our next myth? Our next myth is positivity has nothing to do with your intellectual performance. You walk around negative Nelly all day? Is that going to impact your intellectual performance? According to Brian, he believes it does. Dr. Brian went into a schoolhouse and worked with school children. They split the kids into two groups. Very important fact, they were split into two groups and they had high, middle, and low academic performers in each group. One group was just simply asked to take a standardized math test. The other group, before they took the test, simply were seated down and they were experienced a facilitated discussion around, what was the happiest day in your life, boys and girls? What did you do? Who were you with? Where did you go? And then they just said thank you and they were left to take their exam. You know what the results were? The ones that went into it with positivity blew the doors off the other group. And there are other studies that prove the exact same thing. So it impacts our cognitive performance. Positivity has nothing to do with your focus. Yeah, it does. I want you to think back to the last time you bought a new car. New to you or new off the showroom floor. Guaranteed you started to see all the same or similar make and model vehicles that magically appeared out of nowhere that weren't there the day before. Is that what happened? Nope. You were just focused on it. It's called the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon or frequency bias. I certainly hope each and every one of you are doing some form of morning huddle before you begin your day. But I also hope, even with more resignation, that you're also focusing on things that you're grateful for or things that you're looking forward to. Because if all you're focusing on is challenges, problems, and exceptions, all you're going to see all day is challenges, problems, and exceptions. Positivity has nothing to do with your diagnostic acumen. There's 3 favorite studies in here. This is number 1. Let's talk about this because this is hugely important for you as clinicians and also proves my point that this doesn't need to be some monstrous effort of smiling all the time. It can be momentary jolts of positivity. So Dr. Estrada was looking to investigate how physicians could be affected by the occurrence of anchoring. Anchoring is when you get stuck upon an idea or an initial diagnosis. Even when other information comes to your universe, you deny it and you go with your initial thought. So what did he do? He split these physicians into 3 groups. The happy group, I'll tell you that in a second, the neutral group, and the control group. They were given medical information to read to come to a diagnosis, and they were timed. There was no time limit. They were simply timed. So the information also is important to add was staged in a way to encourage anchoring, the way the information was given to them. So what were the results? Well, the control group was just simply given the information. The neutral group was given unrelated medical information that was deemed neither positive or negative to read. And then there was the happy group. You know what the results were? The happy group made the correct diagnosis faster and exhibited less anchoring. 20% of the way through the material, twice as fast as the other 2 groups with 2.5 times less anchoring, 20% of the way through the material and twice as fast as the other 2 groups. You know how they were primed to be happy? This is nuts. With candy. Yeah. Not the actual eating of candy that could mess with their blood sugar, that could mess with the results. No, no, no. Just simply, here, doctor, here's some candy. You can eat it when you're done. So what I'm going to say to you is that positive brains function better and dualism doesn't exist. So I'm going to give you another tool. And this is a researched tool that gets a lot of airplay, but it's a real scientific thing. Practicing gratitude, like I talked about in the beginning of your day in your morning huddle or with your team, has nothing to do with performance. Yeah, it does. So let's talk about this for a moment. When we think about gratitude, there's a gentleman named on the screen, on the left side of the screen, Dr. Martin Seligman. Martin's a wonderful first name, don't you think? Yeah, I think so. And Dr. Seligman, it's my understanding, is the gentleman who got up in front of the American Psychological Association and said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, of course, Houston, we've got a problem. We're spending all this time studying anxiety, mania, depression. Why are we not studying positivity? And it's my understanding that based upon that one speech, it started the train that has yielded this mountain of data that we have today, and mountains of research. So what did Seligman do? He worked with diagnosed depressed patients. And he split them into 2 groups. One group went on their way, taking their meds. The other group wrote down 3 things a day they were grateful for 7 days and stopped. They were then evaluated at 1, 3, and 6-month intervals. They reported lower levels of depression, higher levels of life satisfaction, and higher levels of happiness than the control group on meds. So if that's a little bit too mushy-gushy subjective for you, I'll see you a Seligman and I'll raise you a red wine. Dr. Redwine on the left side of the screen, he did that, but one more. He changed the subject group. This is fascinating. He worked with stage B heart failure patients. He took blood samples before and after. After the study where they wrote down 3 things a day they were grateful for and stopped, their inflammatory blood markers reduced. So this positivity stuff matters. We can use optimism as a tool to drive great dentistry for ourselves and our team. Now, we keep using the term optimism, we keep using the term happiness, and I told you one of my 3 goals is to help you understand that you hold the key to your own life success, to help you understand that a single thought or chain of thoughts can change everything, and how happiness can be used to navigate this yellow brick road of life, perhaps in a different way. So I'm a very proud holder of a certification in happiness studies, which, by the way, as of a month and a half ago, is now an accredited master's. I missed out on the master's. I'm kind of bummed, but it's the same course of study. And the gentleman who founded this group is this man, Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar. He's world-renowned. He's an internationally best-selling author, and he gained initial notoriety when the Boston Globe got wind of the fact that this Harvard professor was giving a course on the science of happiness, and the students were lined up in the corridor. And the basis of the article was, shouldn't they all be happy? They're at Harvard. And the answer was actually no. And boy, oh boy, are we going to talk about that. So he's made it his life's work to share with as many people as possible by educating people like me to share his concepts throughout the world. Now, see, he didn't come up with this all by his own. It was all a research-based year-long course of study. And so I'll give you 2 other examples. Plato, the philosopher, has been quoted as saying, the part can never be well until the whole is well. Helen Keller, if you may be familiar with her, she was blind, deaf, and mute. I didn't even realize before I took my study, she has this body of work on whole being and happiness, somebody who can't see or hear the world. And she's quoted as saying, to me, the only definition of happiness is wholeness. So happiness isn't one thing, it's an experience. So whether you study Viktor Frankl, Plato, the Dalai Lama, who we didn't mention, or Helen Keller, whole being or happiness is at the pinnacle of all of their goals within their works, including, of course, Dr. Ben-Shahar. So let's talk about this in a real life application perspective. And we're going to get very real here for a couple minutes. When we look upon our life and we think about happiness, many of us look at happiness as some goal, some achievement down the road. The truth of the matter is, true happiness, true whole being, true well-being is the journey, not the destination. Now, I've studied this for years. I've worked on this personally for years. I've had a lot of challenges in my own life. And there was a reason why I showed you that Ivoclar photo earlier. The reason I showed you that photo is because that day I was very happy. Was I happy because I was given the honor of the microphone? No. I was happy for all the hours, time, and effort that got me there. And there is a very, very big difference. I first came upon this in the book, The Happiness Advantage by Sean Accor, one of the many books behind me. And he has a TED Talk, by the way, that I strongly recommend you check out. It's got like over 10 million views. It's amazing. And he talks about in this book that's so entertaining and has more scientific references than pages, believe it or not. In the first chapter, he talks about a meta-analysis by Sonia Lyubomirsky that evaluated 200 studies comprising 275,000 people worldwide. from different countries, ethnicities, socioeconomic backgrounds, political positions, societal positions, that came beyond a shadow of a doubt that happiness led to success, not the other way around. It wasn't where they were that made them happy, it was the journey. So Houston, we got a problem, because when we keep focusing on specific goals, we're never going to be happy. So let's talk about this from the frame of a dentist. So you're not all of us, but most of us, we're younger, we get into dental school, we go, yay, I made it. And then you finish dental school and you're in your first day in practice and you're like, yay, I made it. Then you buy the first car that you wanted and you go, woohoo. Then you buy your first home and you go, woohoo. You get married, you have kids, etc. But if we keep looking to the achievement of specific places, amount of money in our bank account, titles, whatever it may be, we're never going to be happy. Why? Because the goalposts keep changing. It's called hedonic adaptation. They've studied this with lottery winners. Here's the good news and the bad news. Will winning the lottery make you happy? Will graduating dental school make you happy? Absolutely. But for a short period of time. You will then go back to your baseline, whatever your baseline is for you. But the good news, the good news is your baseline is movable. So how many of you have ever lamented the passing of a celebrity or somebody of note that either took their life or through addiction indirectly took their life? I may be dating myself, but I always think of Kurt Cobain and Whitney Houston. And you think to yourself, they had it all. Did they? They didn't think so. Why did they do that? And so we look to these celebrities and we think they have it all, and we look to them as these pinnacles, many of us, not all. But there's two celebrities, younger celebrities today, that I always mention in my keynotes for two reasons. One, I want to celebrate them. And two, I'm determined to keep putting out in the universe, and I want to meet them both one day. The first is Shawn Mendes. Shawn Mendes. I love Shawn Mendes' music. I don't even think he's 30. He's got more money than he knows what to do with. Why Shawn Mendes? Have you ever heard him interviewed? He talks about, it is Rebecca, he talks about anxiety, depression. It's in his lyrics. It's in my blood. I watched a podcast of his. It was over an hour long where all he talked about was mental health. I want to shake his hand and thank him. The second, Rebecca blew my cover, is Taylor Swift. Yes, I'm a Swiftie. Yes, I was at the opening night of the Eras Tour that happened to be in Phoenix, Arizona. It was amazing. Why her? Because as I was preparing to go see her concert, I was doing a little research and I stumbled upon this Netflix documentary called Americana. And it was filmed around the time of one of her previous tours. And there's a point midway through that I encourage you to watch. It's a great documentary, where she's talking about winning Album of the Year for the second time in a row. And she laments repeatedly, this is all I've ever wanted. This is all I've ever wanted. She goes, shouldn't there be somebody I can call? Okay, she's got Travis Kelce now, whatever. This was a couple years ago. Shouldn't there be someone I could call? I mean, I love my mom and I can call her. That's hedonic adaptation. And she has come out talking about anxiety and depression and challenges with her weight based upon societal pressures. I want to shake her hand as well. So happiness, according to Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, is multidimensional. Great dentistry is multidimensional. We can't do what we do without our teams and vice versa. And what would it be like if we could actually take a step back and level the playing field to really address what's going on between our ears and what comes out between our lips? So happiness, I want to propose to you, is like a rainbow. This literally came to me less than 2 months ago in the shower. Why is happiness like a rainbow? Well, rainbows are beautiful, right? Many people believe there's a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow. Rainbows are elusive if you've ever tried to chase one down in your car. They happen after a storm, and they're comprised of a multitude of colors within a multitude of parts or colors. So what I want you to do, if you're comfortable, so I want you to close your eyes, and I'm just going to facilitate a little visualization exercise with you just for 10, 20 seconds. I want you to think about the best day in your life. Could have been yesterday or 10 years ago. What was the occasion? Who were you with? What were you doing? How did you feel? How present were you? Were you active or were you hanging out on a beach? How did that experience bond you closer to the people you were with? And how did you feel about the people you were with? So I invite you to open your eyes. And with this in mind, we're going to go into Dr. Ben Shahar's concept of whole being or happiness as represented by an acronym of the word SPIRE. And we're going to go through it here to give you a tool, another tool, before we end our time here today. So the S stands for spiritual well-being. This is not religious or deity related, although it could be. This is about meaning, purpose, and presence. Because see, here's the thing, folks. A positive look to the future is just as valuable as a negative look to the future because neither's happened yet. And when we sit and we look toward the future, we're not in our present. Furthermore, if you sit here and look at me and go, well, Martin, I want to look at the future with a little trepidation because you never know what can happen. Or you listened to me 10 minutes ago with all the research? Now, I might bend your brain a little bit here, so I apologize. All we actually have is the present. The past has already happened. The future hasn't happened yet. No, by the way, when you get to this future place, it's now your present. It's all you got. So we might as well be present to the best of our ability to be present for ourselves and our loved ones. So presence and meaning and driving meaning for what we do, taking people out of pain, creating beautiful restorations to increase their confidence. What we do is amazing. So that's presence and meaning. Physical well-being is about treating your body like a vessel. We beat our bodies up just in doing what it is we do. So this is all about nutrition, rest, exercise. I'm getting a little older now, and if you told me when I graduated dental school in 1996 that airway would be a big deal in dentistry, I'd look at you like you were nuts. But it's a big deal. How are you treating your body like a vessel? Are you taking time for yourself and exercise and stretching? As Dr. Ben Shahar stated, I wrote this quote down myself. If we agree that exercise has been well established as an antidepressant, I think it's safe to say a lack of exercise can function as a depressant. How are we honoring our bodies as a vessel? Eating right, sleeping right, getting some exercise. Every day? No, you're human. Give yourself some breaks. But most days, yes. How are we doing so? Intellectual well-being. This is a biggie. This is about living your life in curiosity. And let me tell you something. Living your life in curiosity is so much less of a stressful life than living your life in judgment. I've been with my husband now, it'll be 30 years next year. And I realized when we first got together that I was raised in a very loving and judgmental home. He was raised in a very loving and curious home. Because when I would encounter situations where things didn't go exactly right, I would skip to judgment 30 years ago. Oh, they did that on purpose. They were trying to get something over on me, blah, 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 blah. Versus, why did they do that? I wonder why they did that. What could be a possible explanation for that? What are some reasons for that? I'm not giving people excuses, but what I'm also not doing is charging a cost to my mental health. Yeah, absolutely, Ted Lasso, 100%. I'm not charging a cost to my mental health by sitting in judgment. I'm sitting there in curiosity. How many times have you had a situation that I know you can think of where you got all spooled up because somebody didn't do something, and then you find out that it was the exact opposite, and you go, oh, that wasn't a big deal. I know you've all done that. That's what we're talking about. Relational well-being. This is all about interpersonal relationships. You spend more time with your team than you do anybody else. Relational well-being is critical. The Grant study, the longest study ever conducted in human history, followed 268 undergraduate men, unfortunately it was only men, for 75 years, measuring anthropologic, physiologic, sociologic data points, net worth, IQ, etc. Fun fact, JFK was part of the initial cohort. until his untimely assassination in 1963. What was the most important factor in happiness over 73 years? The warmth of relationships throughout life has the greatest positive impact on life satisfaction. You need a posse. You got one here. You don't need 100 people, but you need people in your life. Last but not least, emotional well-being. This is about flow and resilience. This is where we get to talk about toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is the belief that we should put a positive spin on all experiences, even those that are profoundly tragic. That's hogwash. Toxic positivity is happy thoughts, good vibes only, completely negates the fact that happiness is a comparative emotion. Let me give you another tool. You know the phrase, everything happens for a reason? If you use that in isolation, that's toxic because it's not allowing you to address the negativity. But what if you said this? Everything happens for a reason. This stinks. I'm mad. I'm going for a run. I'm getting some pizza. And then I'm going to turn my attention to what can I learn from this? What can this teach me? How can I be a better person? What are you doing? You're changing your focus. What happens when we focus? Frequency illusion. We start to see opportunity in life. What happens to our brain? Broaden and build theory. We start to see things differently. See, it's all connected. And when we talk about emotional well-being, this has to do with emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is just simply the capacity to understand and control your emotions so that you can actually navigate these things called relationships in a way that serves all parties. And so often the joke is when you think about dentistry and dentists, you know, our IQ got us into dental school. But when we combine our IQ and our heart, we get emotional intelligence. That's the difference. Interesting thing, when I'm certified to give emotional intelligence assessments, and often when I do a 360 assessment with the doctor and the team, where the team is talking about the doctor and the doctor's talking about him or herself, it's all anonymous. Often there's a gap in empathy, and every single time, the gap, meaning the doctor thinks he or she's more empathetic than the team does, it's always, to date, we're talking almost 24 assessments, that it's not that the doctor isn't empathetic, they're not expressing it. Or they're not expressing it in a way that the team can hear them. It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So I want you to think back to your best day. Do you remember that? How did we do with Spire? How present were you? How were you honoring your body like a vessel, whether that's hanging out on a beach, having a margarita, wonderful meal? What did you learn about the people you were with, just like sitting there being open? How were you deepening your relationships? How did you feel about those people? If you think about a day on a given weekend that was kind of spontaneous, you're like, damn, that was a good day. Guarantee you it fits in Aspire, hook, line, and sinker. It is a wonderful, wonderful tool. So as we start to close, this is what I like to do. I want to summarize what we learned. I want to share with you something I'm developing. Thank you, Bobby. And I invite you for your input. You have my email from the invitation. I'm not going to contact you. That's not appropriate. But I want to hear what you think about this, because this is something that I've come up with less than 5 days ago. I'm going to give you my gift. Then I'm going to share with you my favorite piece of research and a wonderful, heartwarming story to close our time together. Sound good? Sound good? All right. So what did we learn today? Well, number one, many of us are miserable. We learned that today. We learned that positivity will affect your practice and clinical success, that there is no I in team, but there is me, that our thoughts lead to emotions that drive our actions that manifest our results, that, yeah, we all jump in a catastrophe, that dualism is hogwash, happiness has 5 parts as represented by Spire, and happiness is a journey, not a destination. So I want to share with you something I developed that I'm super excited about. And it's all about pressing play on your life. So it starts with a deep dive into team thoughts, leading emotions, actions, manifestations. But not only do we take a deeper dive than we had time for today, we also talk about how you can use it in reverse. Because team is reactive when you come upon a situation, and meet, the opposite way, is proactive. You come upon a situation. What do I really want to do right now to bring this forward? Oh, I want to do this. Great. That's your action. What kind of emotion needs to support that action? Well, maybe it's confidence. And what kind of thought needs to support that confidence? Well, maybe it's just, let's do this. So we need to understand what makes us tick and how we're responsible for what goes on between our ears. The second step is an assessment called Clifton's Strengths. I'm not certified in this, but I can coach through this. And it measures 5 signature strengths. This has been completed millions of times on millions of individuals. Why? Because what stresses most of us out the most is not the clinical stuff. That comes and goes. It's the business stuff. It's the team stuff. It's the stuff we have to deal with, right? So what are we strong in? What are we not strong in? Let's figure that out. Once we figure that out, we go to the next step. This is the Eisenhower matrix. This will allow you to take an inventory of your life, all the things that you need to do, and figure out, do I need to do this soon? Do I need to calendar it? Do I need to delegate it? Oh, we'll get to that in a minute. Or do I need to drop it from my life completely? Let me give you a little secret. I invite you to look this up. It's quadrant 2, the planning that will change your life. Because it's the stuff that's important that isn't time-bound, like going to the gym, that can change your life. So once we figure out which stuff we want to hold, plan, or delegate, how do we navigate through our daily lives? Well, there comes in getting things done. David Allen's million best-selling book. It's a methodology about literally how to survive with the massive amount of information that comes at us every day. I've been using this for over a decade, and I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, it's life-changing to help to organize your day so you don't feel stressed out all the time. And last but not least, the next step is delegation. How many of you have to delegate and have wondered sometimes you've delegated something to somebody and you go, why aren't they doing it this way? I thought I was clear. Maybe you were, maybe you weren't. So this framework is all about our ability to communicate effectively so the delegatee doesn't feel micromanaged. Last but not least, the number one thing people come to me for: how do I deal with a difficult situation? What do I say? How do I keep the relationship? In Kyle Stanley's Light Side group, this is part of the curriculum because it's so overwhelmingly requested. How do I deal with this stuff? So at the end of the day, it's a way for you to understand how you think, what you're strong in, everything that you have to do, how to navigate through everything, how to delegate things you need to delegate, and oh yeah, how to communicate with these other people called human beings that will help garner success in your life. So I would love to hear from you. See what you think about this. If you like this, give me a yes in the chat. I'm curious. And I'm going to be developing this over the next couple months. So I want to give you my gift. What is my gift? Well, it's me. And what do I mean by that? The most precious thing that anybody can give to anybody else is what? Time. So I invite you, there's my QR code, or just email me. You already have my email. Drop me a line. Let's sit on the phone for a half hour. Let's talk about the challenges that you're having so that we can craft a different tomorrow versus what you're going through today. So I invite you to connect with me. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, any of those crazy things. I'd love to see you there. Speaking of seeing you there, how many of you are going to CDA? I'm lecturing 4 times at CDA. So if you're at CDA, please come say hello. I hope to see you in November on Glidewell's campus with my dear friend Kyle. And so let's finish our time together with my favorite bit of research and one of my favorite stories. So Dr. Wisniewski is a researcher, as you can see, at Yale University. And she was looking to see how people viewed what it is they did for a living. Now, the interesting side note, if you were to meet me in an airport and you were to ask me what I do for a living, I don't say dentist, I don't say speaker, I don't say educator. You know what I say? I help people get out of their own way on stages with their teams and in person. It's actually helped me meet a Major League Baseball player recently, and now we're friends on Instagram and we chat. It's a whole nother story. But she was looking to see how people viewed what it is they did for a living. So she created a series of questions. that enabled her to categorize how people viewed what they did for a living in either one of three categories. Job, hey, I'm here for the paycheck, can't wait till Friday, hand me a margarita. Career, I'm here for positional or financial advancement. Calling, I'm here for the greater good of man and womankind. Interesting note, this has been repeated by other subject experts with other research groups, got the same results. So she went into a hospital and she asked, you ready for this? Neurosurgeons and janitors these questions to bracket how they viewed what they did for a living. You know what the results were? Although there was a relatively larger number of neurosurgeons that viewed what they did for a living was a calling, there was a relatively even split, a third, between neurosurgeons and janitors, how they viewed what they did for a living. So let's get real here, folks. What that means is you had janitors mopping up bodily fluids and vomit off the floor that viewed what they did as a calling, and you had physicians that were inside people's brains excising cancers that were mostly in it for the financial compensation. Love this research. Then it came to life for me in 2018 on a cruise ship. We decided at the last minute to go on an Alaskan cruise. And if you've been on a cruise before, you know that you go through the security process, they check your bag like an airport, you go through the metal detector, you drop your carry-on in your cabin, and you start to walk around to find where everything is. Usually that's around mid to late morning, as it was for us, and we got a little hungry. And at port, the only thing open typically is the buffet. So we were on deck 10, the buffet was on deck 12. We decided to take the stairs because the elevators are crazy. And what I'm about to share with you happened very quickly, and I'm not going to embellish it at all. As we got to the top of the stairs, we started to hear this commotion, loud talking, laughing. And as we turned the corner, the first thing we noticed, we looked at each other, was that there wasn't a lot of people there for the volume of noise. And in the center of this commotion was this woman in a cruise uniform. And this is what we witnessed. She was standing there with a clear spray bottle, spraying clear liquid into people's hands, which we all know today as what? Hand sanitizer. But this, ladies, is what I witnessed. Hi, how are you? Lunchy, lunchy, washy, washy. My name is Miley, rhymes with Smiley. What is this woman on? Hi, how are you? Lunchy, lunchy. Oh, you're so handsome. Oh, you're so cute. This is really strange. So we figure the only option we have is to go through the gauntlet to get to the crab legs, right? So I approach and I extend my hands and I'm like really kind of nervous and I go, eh. And she looks at me square in the eyes and she goes, hi, lunchy, lunchy, washy, washy. My name is Smiley, rhymes with Smiley. Squirt. Her name tag says Elena. Do they know she's going as Miley? Like, what is wrong with her? I was in judgment. So I wash my hand, we rub our hands together. We literally said to each other, I'm embarrassed to say, well, that's weird. And off we went. She was there the first day. She was there the whole cruise. Let me ask you something, ladies. Would you want to stand on your feet for 8 hours a day and spray hand sanitizer in people's hands? We witnessed little boys and little girls on day 3 running up the stairs, washy, washy, lunchy, lunchy. I witnessed 2 women and 1 man walk up to her with tears in their eyes, thanking her for the perspective she gave them on this cruise. On day 5, I was 20 feet away from this entrance to the buffet, and I was reading The How of Happiness and came upon Dr. Wisniewski's research for the 4th time. I threw the book down, I ran in, and I said, ma'am, can I talk to you? She said, yes, sweetie. I said, my name is Martin. This is who I am. This is what I do. I told her about job, career, calling. I said, let me ask you a question. Yes? If I met you on land, like at a restaurant or something, what would you say you did for a living? I work in a restaurant. I said, okay, bad question. I said, no, really. She looks at me. She bores into my soul and she says, sir, I love my job. I'm a waitress. She waves it at me, lets it go and says, but I make people smile. I make people happy. When I say thank you, it's not thank you for coming to the buffet. It's thank you for being on the cruise, because without you, I wouldn't have a job. She finishes by saying, my colleagues, my coworkers say, Elena, what do you do? What do you take? How do you work out? Why are you so happy? She peers into my soul and says, I don't do anything. It's all up here. It's all up here. It's all up here for her. It's all up here for you. She understood that she held the key, and so do you. She understood that a single thought or thought process can change everything. So can it can for you. She understood that happiness is a journey, not a destination. And along the way, life is going to be sweet and it's going to be sour. So be like Elena and stay focused on the good work that your practice does, the actions you take behind your interactions with your team, your patients, and your family, and just focus on being present one step at a time for you to find that thing, that rainbow of happiness that isn't a destination, but a journey. So thank you, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here. A huge honor to be the first dude to come into your midst. It's not lost on me. And I want to thank everybody, Stephanie and Bobby and Andy, for giving me the opportunity to spend some time with you.
Thanks, Doc Martin. You're amazing. And I hope
Thank you.
everybody feels as good as I do right now. Oh, this was much needed going into the weekend. So thank you all for joining us. Take a picture of that QR code, his screenshot your screen. That's the easiest way to do before he takes it down. And we shall chat soon. Any questions from anybody before we sign off?
I saw a couple of people are planning to be at CDA, so that's fantastic.
Awesome.
I know on Saturday, I believe I'm going to be at the Derby booth, like mid to late morning after one of my
What?
lectures.
Excuse
Yeah, yeah.
Where are you
Yeah.
gonna be?
Um, well, I could be anywhere that you want me to. So, yeah.
Glidewell's booth.
Well, maybe next CDA. How about that? How about that?
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yes.
We'll let him borrow you.
Yes.
All
Awesome.
right. If there's no questions, everybody have a wonderful weekend. Great
Put up
seeing all
your
your faces. Miss all of you guys.
Take care, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Mendelson.